Well, good afternoon from Bergen, Norway, where it is approaching 5 o'clock. This is our last full day on vacation, and I just wanted to put some thoughts down about the differences between the U.S. culture and Norwegian culture. I try to build a lot of margin into free time when I'm on vacation, or what they call holiday here. And I picked up about a dozen just random facts that I thought were interesting about the Norwegian people, and then I picked up some societal differences that I think the U.S. would greatly benefit from. So I wrote a few of them down, just thought I would share it. Um, I once heard a study, by the way, that the further you were or are away from home, wherever you call home, the more abstract or unique your thoughts can be. And I think I had a great week just being so far away from the hustle and bustle to kind of have a fresh take on a totally awesome culture. So I'll list about a dozen things that I thought were interesting, and then get into some, like I said, differences in the way I think culturally we are, because it's rather fascinating in my opinion. So starting off, you're not on vacation, you're on holiday here, which is probably the case all throughout Europe. We were here for a total of 8 days, 7 nights, flew direct from New York. I also have a really interesting story at the end of this video about how this trip came about, which I'll get to shortly. The Norwegian people are beautiful inside and out. They all look like, most of them look like Abercrombie models back in the U.S., and they're very nice. A lot of them went way out of their way for us while we were here to make sure we were having a great time. Thought it was interesting. You can only buy beer up to 4.7% alcohol content in any grocery store. Anything higher needs to be purchased by slightly more controlled state stores, which are few and far between. You also can't buy wine in a grocery store. Restaurants can have slightly higher alcohol rates on the same beers, but they're very strict about drinking and driving. And even marijuana is totally illegal here. You look at some of the progression it's made in the U.S. It's a highly controlled drug here, and considered just as dangerous as any other synthetic drug would be back in the U.S. It's normal for women here to put what we call dip in their mouth, or chewing tobacco, which I thought was interesting. You commonly see girls walking around with these little tins in their back pocket. It's also common to see people smoking cigarettes, common to see people rolling cigarettes. Both cigarettes and tobacco here come in these generic wrappers, which aren't even branded, and I think they're fairly inexpensive. Another thing, Tesla is a very popular brand here. It's expensive back in the U.S., but due to tax breaks, you see Teslas as commonly as you would a Ford in the U.S. A lot of the taxi drivers are even driving Teslas, so that was definitely an interesting observation. You wouldn't be able to tell now, but it never gets totally dark. It gets slightly darker around, say, 11 p.m. or midnight, but the darkness never fades. That's how far you are north. We're in a town called Bergen, and that's just below Anchorage, Alaska, from a comparison standpoint. College is free and paid for by the state. Interesting. This is funny. About 10% of Norwegians believe in trolls or some spirits in the woods. I actually have a video on my YouTube page about that. All stores are closed on Sundays. This is also random, and we found out the hard way, but it's more acceptable to swear in public than it is to blow your nose. Some words get lost in translation. A blue tit is a very common bird here. Interesting. Cheese is identified or named by its color. There's a brown cheese that's very popular here. It's usually made from goat's milk. I actually bought a couple to take back to the U.S. Just a few more random observations. Doors are opened by pushing them in, not by pushing them towards you, and they're unlocked and locked the opposite way than they are in the U.S. The word fart means speed, so you commonly see the word fart on the sides of roads or on the sides of lakes. And the population of Bergen is 250,000. At least it was last census year. 30,000 of which are college students. We took a tour and learned all that. And I think the closest example that I can find in the U.S. would be Madison, Wisconsin, where you have a university population and kind of a thriving population there year round as well. And it's absolutely spectacular. So a few of the cultural observations I made, these are really important, I think, but everyone in Norway, at least who we interacted with, is extremely present. The only people you see walking around on their cell phones are really tourists. Locals enjoy conversations and laughter. In many cases with large groups of friends, it was very common for us to go to a restaurant and see a table of 8 girlfriends or 8 guys just hanging out for 3 or 4 hours, having the time of their lives. And it's also common to see people just sitting out in parks, relaxing, gazing off into space. I feel like in the U.S. we have we're a little overly distracted when it comes to stuff like that. 2, guns are literally non-existent. Citizens don't own guns. Police don't carry guns. They have very little crime here. Doors are kept on lock, and they have a culture of respect. So just chalk that up for what it's worth. The air is crystal clear. All transportation options are designed to optimize air quality. So if you're looking at options of ways to get to the airport, you'll see how that option, whether it's rail, car, or bus, affects the environment. The food was very flavorful and in small portions and well done. The free hotel breakfast looked like a Sunday brunch in an upscale restaurant, just fabulous. Speaking of food, but the Norwegians are the ones that introduced the salmon version of sushi to the Japanese. The average time for dinner, tonight's our last dinner reservation, it's around 8 p.m. And I also observed a lot of people exercising. I went to the gym today because it's raining and the place was packed at 11 a.m. Also took a run around the lake here in the morning. It's about a little over 5K, and they have a culture of exercise for sure. The opinion of American people, I would say, is good. The opinion of our president is not so good, but it does not dominate headlines here like it does back at home. In fact, politics don't dominate headlines at all. We didn't hear people talking about politics. In fact, when you turn the TV on, you see sitcoms from the U.S. like Seinfeld, Friends, The Office is popular here. All these years later, I think that says a lot about Norwegians, how they want to entertain themselves. So, in my opinion, after being here, it appears that the U.S. has created a toxic stew of anger around opposing views. You couple that with social media and access to literally get any gun or any weapon, I think I would expect our culture of rage in the U.S. and violent crime to unfortunately continue. I don't know of an answer besides trying to disband yourself from social media and getting caught up in those talks. I think that we need to have a culture in the U.S. where even if we don't agree, we respect each other. I think we've lost that. I think that will go a very long way. So I told you I had a story about how to end this, and I think this is reflective of my observations being here. But we were pumping gas at a gas station in Lancaster, PA, where I'm from, about 6 months ago, and I observed some tourists that were lost. I observed them because I'm trying to practice being present, fully here, right? So I was fully there, and they were struggling with pumping gas, and I helped them with that. After a long conversation, found out that they were visiting and wanted to see the Amish. So my dad was born Amish. I thought, why not tour them around myself, or at least offer? I have access to Amish farms, and they were going to a tourist trap. So long story short, decided to pick them up at their bed and breakfast the next day. My daughter and I'm here with my oldest daughter and her best friend. We toured them around Lancaster County for about 3 or 4 hours, went to the farmers market downtown Lancaster, went to an Amish farm, went to a greenhouse, and we eventually arrived in this village where they could buy goods, and they tried to give me all this money, several $100s. I said, I don't want your money, but I wouldn't mind going to Bergen, Norway someday. So they decided to host us here, and I guess that's what you get for being present, taking a vested interest in people, not being interesting to people, which I think the Norwegians have taught me to do. Be respectful, and you never know when you might make a friend in Norway. So it's been a fabulous week here. I would highly recommend it to anyone. New York to Bergen direct was very affordable. All the prices here are comparable to the US, and this is the most authentic Norway experience we could have ever imagined. So that's my opinion about Bergen, Norway. Would highly recommend it. Cheers.